Hello and welcome to some post-round commentary. Starting off, we see I clearly missed my line and split the goalpost of that tree. Obviously, that's not the line you want to take on hole 1, 359 foot par 4. Give myself about a 40-foot look from that not quite ideal drive. I believe that was with my Star Thunderbird, that drive. Leave the putt actually a little bit too high, a little bit too lofted. On this second hole, 280 foot par 4, I'm going to take my destroyer on a forehand line and try to skip towards the pin. I think that gives me the best chance. This line is great, but squares up that tree, which is the danger for going for that gap, I suppose. But that's the highest percentage shot on this. Now that I'm out of position, I'm going to take my zone, do a bit of a forehand approach, slightly flat, give it a little bit of Anheuser was my intention there. But put myself pretty close to the pin. It's nice and comfortable, almost a tap in. And there we go, moving to 2 through 2. The first 5 holes of this course are extremely forgiving par 4s. On any other course, they would be par 3s. The course design here is a little bit strange, I have to say. On this hole, I'm going to take my buzz, get lucky again through the trees, but unfortunately because of that rather strange hyzer, I'm going to end up about 55 from the pin. Far enough for... oh, I guess I'm just going to run it with my normal spin putt. Again, I'm leaving them a little bit more lofty than I would like, not direct towards the basket. That'll give me another tap-in birdie on this hole, hole 4, 270. I believe I took my Mako 4, not my usual play, and it didn't quite work out for me. It's a pretty straightforward shot. Whatever you can get to go straight for 270 feet. Sometimes it's a putter. I like to throw my Opto-X Fuse on this hole most of the time. Keep me safe from the OB tennis courts and the bog. It's obviously quite an obstructed putt. I ended up going for kind of a weak spin putt. On this hole, hole 5, is again another straightforward hole. Straightforward par 4, which is easy to eagle. I end up taking my approach zone, putting it flat towards the pin, and letting it fade out to give me this 20 to 25 footer for an eagle. So now I am 1 ahead of perfect pace. But it gets much harder in the woods. Hole 6 is shorter, finally our first par 3, but these guardian trees here block the entire fairway. You basically have to... I've found that putting a putter on a slight hyzer and praying that it gets through these gaps is the best option. And this time it worked out for me with that Proton Ion, one of my new favorite throwing putters. It flies great. Usually on this hole, I actually use my Electron Pilot, which is my main approach disc, but I actually don't have it. For this round, I left it in the field. This is another hole I would usually use my Pilot, but instead I use my R-Pro Hydra, giving it something a little bit more naturally overstable than the Ion I used on the previous hole. And that one I thought was gonna bounce out, which would have been just awful. But I'm walking away with 2 birdies in the woods, better than normal. Hole 8, 220-foot par 3. I have consistently had trouble on this hole. I never know what the right option is. Today I decided to go for the buzz forehand, but something happened there. I just wasn't engaged at all. Then it hit that tree. I pitch out with my zone there. Yeah, the sun was in the lens, so I tried to color adjust it a little bit. I ended up leaving it very wide, giving me this about 20 to 25 footer again. Another part right on the edge of my comfort zone. Sneaks in a little bit high on the cage for hole 8. Statistically, I believe this is the hardest hole on the course for me, averaging about hole 9. This one can sometimes be a mid-range hole, but I decide to disc up to a river and thrown a little bit more softly, ideally to give myself more control, but it didn't quite work out today, hitting some of the low foliage on this tunnel par 4. The jump putt, way too high, goes about 20 feet long, could be an easy comebacker, but as we'll see, I actually end up behind this tree, giving myself an awkward straddle out. I struggle with straddle putts always, and it shows on the scorecard. So now through 9, I'm 8 down, going into hole 10, another one of the more difficult holes on the course. It's very difficult to get there with a backhand. You have to have something laser straight. The forehand is a lot easier, and I decided to go with that today with my zone. A little bit of a forehand hyzer, and it seems to work out pretty well, putting me right next to the pin. This hole averages a 2.8, so slightly under par. I was right. Hole 8 is the only hole on this course for me that averages over par. Hole 11 from the long tee is considerably longer than anything else. I pull out my beat-in destroyer and get the absolute perfect mash. Hits those trees and actually rolls another 20 feet farther, which I did not see in the first place. I did decide to measure this throw with U-disc. Here we have this slightly sped up just to see it. I like to measure now that I'm getting more reliably into the 400s. Yeah, and there we are. This was a 403-foot drive on this 450-foot hole. Farther towards the left, a little bit out of position, gives me this 70-foot, and close. Right on the pin. So now I'm 10 under through 11. Hole 12 is a shorter par 3, one that I usually don't get. This time I'm taking my forehand felon, swinging out a little bit wider than usual. You can see with these guardian trees here, it's tough to get a backhand to this place. The forehand is a lot wider, but it takes more power than I am used to having. My forehand is clearly developing, which is good. But I have to develop a little more control before it's reliable. This hole, hole 13, 240, another shorter hole, but it has a little bit of a low ceiling right in front of the pin. So the best play tends to be a low, straight to understable mid-range that'll just glide under that low ceiling there and give you a putt, which I have this time. Another interesting thing about this hole is that the basket, you can see, is actually considerably lower than you would expect from a normal basket. I believe the cage is about a foot lower than some of these other baskets. Hole 14, shortest hole on the course, about 140 feet, but similar to hole 6 with guardian trees blocking almost the entire fairway. But this hole actually has a line, and we'll see it travel through here. There's a really nice, basically forehand hyzer upshot line that'll get you close to the pin most of the time, and it worked for me today. Now moving on to the easiest hole on the course for me, a 230-foot downhill par 4. I have eagled this more times than I've birdied it, averaging 2.4 strokes on a par 4. Today's clearly no different. My sometimes putting putter, the classic hybrid, or the classic Warden, I'm using today as my slightly understable upshot putter, replacing my Pilot, which is what I would normally use on this hole. Gets me pretty close for the basically tap-in eagle, and I'm now back on pace. Hole 16, one of the tougher holes, and you can hear that the wind is coming back up. I'm going to put my zone out on a little bit of a flex and land pretty close to the pin. It's an awkward distance for my arm speed. It's hard to get a normal putter there, and mid-rangers will always go about 20 feet long. So I tried today the zone, and it put me within about 25 feet. My slightly uncomfortable range. And you can see it almost bounces out weak side. Still, it stays in, keeping the 18 under dream alive. Now we have hole 17. I try to put it right under, on a little bit of an anhyzer right under the basket, but I end up misreleasing extremely wide, putting me way out of position for the birdie, and putting me in some rather weird footing. I have to go to the straddle, something I still struggle with. Big elevator putt, and it still almost gets there. Just a few feet short and flashing chains. But the dream's not over yet, because hole 18 is another very eagleable hole on the course. It's a par 4, 259 feet. 254 feet, excuse me. Averages 2.7 strokes for me, so I still have an eagle chance.
Run-up.
Ah, yes. And there seems to be a baseball game going on. I stopped for a few minutes to first let the bikers that you saw in the last clip through and to catch my breath. And here we are. Put that same Warden up. The body language, and it's close. It's actually about 25 feet long. As far as I remember, that's the first time I've ever used that type of arm waving body language into, oh, and there it is. Make the eagle putt on the slightly tougher side of slightly on the uncomfortable side of my putting.
All right. 18 down at my home course.
And a few words from my past self.
Only 2 holes that I completely biffed. Hole 9 and hole 17.
I would also add in hole 8.
The really bad ones, but it's nice to be able to. It's nice to shoot another 18 down at my home course. I'm sure there will be many to come. I'm still getting a lot better. My distance is constantly improving. I'm practicing putting. I'm glad I could bring the camera along today. It's quite a surprise. My second legitimate 18 under at the home course.
All right.
All right.
Thank you all for watching. I have had one other 18 other round recently. It was just a couple weeks ago. And what I mean by legitimate 18 under is that I actually did have an 18 under in quotation marks last summer, but that was when I played with two mulligans like I had originally started playing with some of my friends from high school. I'm sure I'll keep continuing to get better. It's very exciting to see things like 25 footers being a little bit more comfortable as far as putting and being able to throw 400-foot shots for the first time in my life, obviously. I even got a 440-foot shot on that same hole, hole 11, only a few days ago. If I remember correctly, the last time that a tournament was played here, an 18 under or a course 45 was 982 rated, which is, I guarantee, a personal best round of mine. I'm excited to continue developing in disc golf, and I'm glad that you guys stuck through to watch this round with me. I'm glad I can share some of these things finally. All right. Thank you for watching.